Admiral Kithara stood before the massive holographic display that showed the entire galaxy. Thousands of tiny lights blinked across the spiral arms, each one representing a known species, their homeworld, and their current threat level. The Complete Species Registry was the pride of the Galactic Dominion. For 3,000 years it had catalogued every thinking species in the galaxy. The registry never lied. It never made mistakes. It was perfect. Kithara's 4 arms moved across, the control panel with practiced ease. Her purple skin gleamed under the soft blue light of the command center. As the head of Dominion Intelligence, she had spent most of her long life studying the data streams that flowed into the registry every day. New species were rare now. The galaxy had been mapped, catalogued, and organized. Today should have been like any other day. "Admiral," called Subcommander Vexen from across the room. His voice carried a strange note that made Kithara's head turn. In all her years of service, she had never heard Vexen sound confused. "We have received some unusual reports from Sector 7439. Kithara's primary eyes focused on him, while her secondary eyes continued to monitor the displays around her. "Define unusual, Subcommander." Vexen's scales shifted from green to a worried yellow. "A patrol ship found debris from a Vorthak raiding fleet, the entire fleet, Admiral, all 12 ships. The Vorthak were known throughout the galaxy as pirates and raiders. Their ships were fast and deadly. They struck without warning and disappeared before anyone could respond. Most species paid them tribute rather than fight. The few that did fight usually regretted it." "Which species destroyed them?" Kithara asked. She was already pulling up the Sector 7439 files in her mind. The area was mostly empty space with a few minor worlds belonging to the Zilani Trading Union. "That is the problem, Admiral. We do not know." Kithara's forearms stopped moving. She turned her full attention to Vexen. "Explain." The subcommander's scales turned a deeper shade of yellow. "The debris field shows signs of kinetic weapons. Very powerful ones. But the precision of the strikes is beyond anything we have seen. Each Vorthak ship was hit in exactly the right place to cause complete system failure. The Zilani do not have that kind of firepower," Kithara said. She knew their specifications by heart. The Zilani were peaceful traders who barely maintained a defense fleet. "No, Admiral. And the weapons signatures do not match any known technology in the registry." Kithara felt something she had not experienced in centuries: uncertainty. She walked to the main display and called up the sector map. Sector 7439 appeared as a 3-dimensional image showing star systems, trade routes, and known military assets. "Show me the debris field location." A red marker appeared near an unnamed star system at the edge of the sector. Kithara studied it carefully. According to the registry, that system had never been fully surveyed. The long-range scans showed several planets, but none were listed as inhabited by intelligent life. "Have we sent a science vessel to investigate?" "Yes, Admiral. The research ship Wisdom Eternal is already en route. They should arrive in 2 standard days." Kithara nodded, but felt uneasy. In 3,000 years, the registry had never encountered a mystery it could not solve. Every species had been catalogued. Every weapon system had been analyzed and recorded. Every military capability had been measured and documented. She called up the Vorthak military files. The raiding fleet that had been destroyed was not just any fleet. It was commanded by War Captain Skelmoth, one of their most experienced leaders. His ships carried the latest Vorthak technology, including energy shields, plasma cannons, and jump drives that could escape from almost any trap. "Subcommander, what was the condition of the Vorthak ships?" Vexen pulled up the analysis reports. "Complete destruction, Admiral. But the interesting thing is that their shields were never activated. The attacks came so fast that they had no time to defend themselves." This made no sense. Vorthak raiders were always ready for battle. Their shields activated automatically when their sensors detected weapons fire. For them to be destroyed before they could even raise their defenses meant that whatever attacked them was incredibly fast and incredibly accurate. What kind of kinetic weapons caused this damage? The analysis team believes they were simple metal projectiles, possibly tungsten or a similar dense material. but they were traveling at impossible speeds. The impact energy suggests velocities that should not be achievable with known propulsion systems. Kithara studied the damage reports. The projectiles had punched through Vorthak armor like it was paper. Each shot had been placed with surgical precision. Engine compartments, weapon, systems bridge sections. Every vital system had been targeted and destroyed. Admiral, Vexon continued, there is something else. The projectiles appear to have been fired from multiple directions. Whoever attacked the Vorthak surrounded them completely before opening fire. A coordinated ambush, Kithara mused. That requires excellent intelligence and precise timing. Show me what species operate in that region. The display updated to show the known military forces within 50 light-years of the debris field. There were 3 minor species with small defense fleets, 2 Dominion patrol squadrons and a Kronar hunting pack that had been tracking the Vorthak raiders. Contact the Kronar. Ask them if they were involved in this attack. Vexon's scales shifted to orange, indicating he was working with outside communications. After a few minutes, he looked up. Admiral, the Kroners say they were still 3 days away when the attack occurred. They were following the Vorthak raiders but had not yet engaged them. The Kroner were warriors by nature. If they had destroyed the Vorthak fleet, they would be bragging about it across the galaxy. The fact that they denied involvement was actually evidence that they were telling the truth. What about the other species in the region? The Dominion patrol squadrons were in dock for maintenance. The minor species all have alibis. They were nowhere near the combat zone. And frankly, Admiral, none of them have the firepower to destroy a Vorthak raiding fleet. Kithara felt her certainty cracking. For the first time in her long career, the registry could not provide an answer. Every known military force in the region had been accounted for. None of them could have carried out this attack. Sub-Commander, I want you to run a complete analysis of the debris field. I want to know everything about those projectiles. Their composition, their origin, their trajectory, everything. Already in progress, Admiral. The preliminary results are unusual. How unusual? Vexon's scales shifted to a color Kithara had rarely seen. Deep purple, indicating extreme confusion. The projectiles show signs of having been manufactured, using techniques that are both primitive and advanced at the same time. The metal composition is simple, just basic iron and tungsten alloy, but the precision of the manufacturing is beyond anything in our databases. Primitive manufacturing with advanced precision, Kithara repeated. That is a contradiction. Yes, Admiral. It is as if someone took very basic materials and shaped them using technology we do not understand. Kithara called up the tactical analysis of the battle. Based on the debris patterns and impact angles, the attack had lasted less than 3 minutes. The Vorthak had been hit from at least 6 different directions simultaneously. The coordination required for such an attack would challenge even Dominion military forces. Who in this sector has that level of tactical capability? According to the registry, no one, Admiral. The words hung in the air like a challenge to everything Kithara believed. The registry was absolute. It was complete. It contained the military capabilities of every known species. If the registry said no one, in Sector 7439 could destroy a Vorthak raiding fleet, then no one could. But the debris field said otherwise. Admiral, Vexon said carefully, what if there is a species in that region that is not in the registry? The suggestion was almost heretical. The registry was complete. The last major addition had been made over 400 years ago when the Dominion discovered the gas giant dwellers in the outer rim. Since then, only minor additions had been made. Primitive species that had not yet developed spaceflight. Impossible, Kithara said automatically. Then she paused. Run a complete sensor sweep of that unnamed system where the debris was found. I want to know if there are any energy signatures that suggest advanced civilization. The wisdom eternal. We'll perform that scan when they arrive, Admiral. But preliminary long-range data shows very low energy output from the third planet. Electromagnetic radiation consistent with early industrial development. Nothing that suggests spacefaring capability. Kithara studied the data again. An early industrial civilization could not possibly have the technology to destroy Vorthak raiders. The Vorthak had been traveling through space for over 2,000 years. Their military technology was proven in countless battles. Sub-Commander, I want you to expand the search. Look for any similar attacks in neighboring sectors. If there is an unknown species involved, they may have struck before. Already begun, Admiral. I have requested battle reports from all military commands within 100 light-years of Sector 7439. Good. And Vexen, classify this investigation at the highest security level. If word gets out that the registry is incomplete, it could cause panic throughout the Dominion. The truth was that Cathara was already beginning to panic. The complete species registry was more than just a database. It was the foundation of Dominion power. Their ability to predict and counter any threat depended on knowing exactly what they faced. If there was a species out there with unknown capabilities, it changed everything. Admiral, Vexen said, his scales now showing rapid color shifts that indicated he was processing multiple data streams. I am receiving reports from neighboring sectors. There have been 3 similar incidents in the past year. All involved the complete destruction of raiding or scouting fleets. All show the same weapon signatures. Cathara felt her blood cool. 3 incidents? Why were these not reported to intelligence? They were classified as local enforcement actions, Admiral. Each sector command assumed that another known species was responsible. No one connected the incidents because they occurred in different regions. Show me. The Galactic display updated to show 4 red markers scattered across nearly 50 light-years. Each one represented a destroyed fleet. As Cathara studied the pattern, she began to see a disturbing possibility. All 4 attack sites were near the edge of known space. All 4 involved fleets that had been operating in regions with minimal Dominion presence. And all 4 showed the same impossible combination of primitive materials and advanced tactics. Sub-Commander, plot a sphere of influence around that unnamed system. Assume a species with faster-than-light capability operating from there. What would their operational range be? The display updated to show a growing sphere of space centered on the mysterious system. As the sphere expanded, it encompassed all 4 attack sites. Admiral, Vexen said quietly, if this is correct, then we are dealing with a species that has been actively defending a territory of nearly 100 light-years diameter. They have been engaging and destroying any military forces that enter their space. Cathara stared at the display. 100 light-years of space containing dozens of star systems. If there truly was an unknown species there, they had been hiding from the Dominion for thousands of years while secretly building the capability to destroy some of the galaxy's most dangerous raiders. Get me a direct communication link with the Wisdom Eternal. I want to speak with Commander Zaxxon personally. Yes, Admiral. As she waited for the connection, Cathara found herself questioning everything she thought she knew about the galaxy. The registry had been built over 3 millennia by the greatest minds of the Dominion. It had seemed impossible that any thinking species could remain hidden for so long. But the evidence was clear. Someone or something was out there. Someone with technology that was both primitive and advanced. Someone who could coordinate attacks across multiple star systems. Someone who had been quietly eliminating any military presence that came too close to their territory. The communication link activated, showing the worried face of Commander Zaxxon. His normally calm expression showed signs of stress. Admiral Cathara, I am glad you contacted me. We have arrived at the unnamed system, and I have some disturbing news to report. Tell me, Commander. Admiral, there is definitely intelligent life on the 3rd planet. We are detecting organized electromagnetic signals, artificial satellites, and what appear to be space launch facilities. But Admiral, they have been watching us since we arrived. Cathara felt a chill run through her body. Explain. We received a transmission from the planet's surface shortly after entering the system. It was in an unknown language using communication, protocols not found in any of our databases. Admiral, whoever they are, they know we are here and they are not afraid of us. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Galactic Dominion had encountered a species that was not in the complete species registry. And based on the evidence of 4 destroyed fleets, this unknown species was not to be underestimated. The galaxy had suddenly become a much more dangerous place. Commander Zaxxon stood on the bridge of the Wisdom Eternal, staring at the blue and white planet that filled the main view screen. It looked peaceful enough, swirling clouds, vast oceans, and brown and green continents. The kind of world that usually hosted simple life forms still learning to use fire, but the sensor readings told a different story. "Commander," reported Science Officer Ulek, "I am detecting over 800 artificial satellites in orbit around the planet. Most appear to be communication and observation devices. Some are much larger, possibly weapons platforms." "Weapons platforms?" Zaxxon's antennae twitched with interest. "What kind of weapons?" "Unknown, Commander. The technology is not in our databases, but the power readings suggest they are capable of significant destructive output." Zaxxon studied the tactical display. The satellites were positioned in a careful pattern that provided complete coverage of the planet's orbital space. It was a defensive network designed by someone who understood military strategy. "Any signs of spacefaring vessels?" "Yes, Commander. We are detecting at least 30 small craft in the outer system. They appear to be patrol ships or scouts. Very primitive construction, chemical rockets and basic fusion drives, but they are moving in coordinated patterns." The communications officer, Tilana, suddenly looked up from her station. "Commander, we are receiving another transmission from the planet's surface. Put it on speakers." The bridge filled with sounds that made no sense to any of them. The language was unlike anything in the Dominion translation database. The sounds were sharp and quick, with none of the flowing tones used by most civilized species. "Translation matrix status?" Zaxxon asked. "Complete failure, Commander. The linguistic patterns do not match any known language family. It is as if this species developed communication completely independently from all other known life forms." This was disturbing news. All known species shared certain basic communication patterns. Even the most alien civilizations used mathematical concepts and logical structures that the translation matrix could decode. For a species to be completely untranslatable suggested they thought in ways that were fundamentally different from everyone else in the galaxy. "Are they responding to our presence?" "Yes, Commander. The transmissions began immediately after we entered the system." "And Commander, they are coming from multiple locations on the planet's surface. This is not just one group trying to communicate. It appears to be a coordinated planetary response." Zaxxon felt his certainty beginning to crack. A coordinated planetary response meant this species had global communications and probably global government. That level of organization required advanced technology and social development, but their ships were primitive and their energy output suggested they were barely past their industrial age. "Commander," called Tactical Officer Ventar, "the patrol ships are changing course. They appear to be moving to intercept us." "How many ships?" 8 vessels, Commander. Estimated arrival time at our position is 4 hours." Zaxxon considered his options. The Wisdom Eternal was a science vessel, not a warship, but it was still far more advanced than anything these primitive beings could field. His shields could probably withstand anything they might throw at him, and his weapons could destroy their entire fleet if necessary. "Maintain course and speed," he ordered. "Let them approach. I want to see what these mysterious ship killers actually look like." "Commander," Ulek said carefully, "should I remind you that these primitive beings apparently destroyed an entire Vorthak raiding fleet?" "Point taken, Science Officer. Raise shields and charge weapons, but do not target the approaching vessels unless they show hostile intent." The hours passed slowly as the unknown ships approached. The bridge crew monitored their progress with growing fascination. The ships were indeed primitive by Dominion standards, crude metal constructions with chemical exhausts and electromagnetic signatures that screamed of early space technology, but they moved with purpose and precision that suggested their crews knew exactly what they were doing. "Commander," Tilana reported, "the unknown vessels are attempting to establish communication again. They are using basic mathematical sequences now. Prime numbers, geometric shapes, that sort of thing. At least they understand universal concepts," Zaxxon muttered. "Respond with the same mathematical sequences. Let them know we received their message." The response came quickly. More complex mathematics followed by what appeared to be star charts and orbital mechanics. Whoever these beings were, they understood space and physics well enough to explain their location and movement patterns. They are trying to establish a common language, Telana said. This is actually quite sophisticated for a primitive species. Commander, Ventar interrupted. Long-range sensors are detecting something unusual in the outer system. Multiple debris fields that we did not notice on our initial scan. Show me. The tactical display updated to show the star system in detail. Near the edge of the system, scattered across several million cubic kilometers, were the remains of what had once been starships. Lots of starships. Analysis of the debris fields, Ventar. Commander, I am reading wreckage from at least 4 different species. Vorthak, Kronar, Zephyrian, and something else I cannot identify. All showing the same weapons damage patterns we observed in the Sector 7439 incident. Zaxxon felt his blood temperature drop. This was not just one mysterious attack. This system was a graveyard for multiple fleets from some of the most dangerous species in the galaxy. How old are these debris fields? The Vorthak debris is approximately 2 standard months old. The Kronar wreckage is older, perhaps 6 months. The Zephyrian debris appears to be nearly a year old. Commander, this species has been systematically destroying every military force that enters their system. What about the 4th species? The one you could not identify? Unknown, Commander. The technology is not in our databases, but based on the debris patterns, it was a significant fleet. At least 20 large vessels. Zaxxon stared at the display showing the approaching primitive ships. 8 small vessels with crude technology, coming to meet a Dominion science ship that could probably destroy all of them with a single salvo. But somewhere in this system were the remains of fleets that had been confident in their own superiority. Commander, Ulek said quietly, I am detecting additional ships launching from the planet's surface. It appears our arrival has triggered some kind of general mobilization. How many ships? Difficult to determine, Commander. They are using the planet's magnetic field and atmospheric interference to mask their signatures. But I estimate at least 50 additional vessels are now in space. 58 ships total, still laughably small compared to a proper military fleet. But the debris field suggested that numbers might not be the most important factor in this system. Commander, Telana announced, the lead ship is transmitting again. They appear to have established enough common language to send a simple message. What does it say? The translation is rough, but it appears to say, unknown ship, state your purpose, this is protected space. Protected space. That phrase sent a chill through Zaxxon's mind. These beings considered this entire star system to be their territory, and they were prepared to defend it. The debris fields proved they had been doing exactly that for some time. Transmit a response, Telana. Tell them we are explorers seeking peaceful contact, we mean no harm. The response came quickly. Telana frowned as she worked to decode it. Commander, they are asking us to identify ourselves. They want to know what species we represent and why we are in their system without permission. Without permission? As if the Galactic Dominion needed permission from a primitive species to explore any system they chose. But Zaxxon remembered the debris fields and decided diplomacy was the wiser course. Tell them we represent the Galactic Dominion. We are investigating reports of destroyed ships in this region. The silence that followed lasted for several minutes. When the response finally came, Telana's expression grew troubled. Commander, they say they are familiar with the Galactic Dominion. They know about our expansion policies and our treatment of primitive species. They are not impressed. They know about the Dominion, Ventar asked. How is that possible? This system is not even in our star charts. Commander, Ulek said, studying his sensor readings, I am detecting something that might explain that. There are several large installations on the planet's surface that appear to be communication arrays, very sophisticated ones. If they have been monitoring galactic communications, they could know a great deal about us. The implications were staggering. This species had been watching the Dominion for who knew how long. They had observed the expansion, the conquest of primitive worlds, the forced integration of lesser species into the Dominion hierarchy. And based on their response, They had decided they wanted no part of it. Commander, Telana continued, they are asking us to leave their system immediately. They say that any military vessels that enter their space without invitation will be treated as hostile. Do they understand that we are a science vessel, not a military ship? I explained that, Commander. Their response was that the Dominion makes no distinction between scientific exploration and military conquest. They have apparently studied our history quite thoroughly. Zaxxon found himself in an impossible situation. His orders were to investigate the destroyed fleets and identify the responsible party. But he was now face to face with beings who clearly were responsible, and they were politely but firmly telling him to leave. Commander, Ventar said urgently, the approaching ships are changing formation. They appear to be taking up attack positions around us. Attack positions? Are you certain? Yes, Commander, they are using a classic encirclement pattern, not as sophisticated as Dominion tactics, but effective against a single vessel. The primitive ships were surrounding the Wisdom Eternal. 8 crude vessels against a Dominion science ship. Under normal circumstances it would be laughable, but nothing about this situation was normal. Weapon status of the approaching vessels? Unknown, Commander. I am not detecting standard energy weapons or missile systems, but there are some kind of launching tubes or rail guns mounted on each ship. Rail guns, kinetic weapons that used electromagnetic force to accelerate metal projectiles to incredible speeds. Simple technology, but potentially devastating if used correctly. And if these were the same weapons that had destroyed the Vorthak raiders, they were far from primitive. Commander, Telana said, they are transmitting again. They say this is their final warning. We have 60 seconds to begin leaving their system, or they will interpret our presence as an act of aggression. Zaxxon looked around his bridge. His crew was well trained, and his ship was advanced, but he was beginning to understand that he was not dealing with typical primitives. These beings had destroyed multiple fleets from species that were far more advanced than they appeared to be. Telana, transmit a message. Tell them we will comply with their request, but first we would like to establish formal diplomatic contact. The Dominion wishes to learn about their civilization. The response was immediate and blunt. They say the Dominion's idea of diplomacy is conquest or vassalage. They have no interest in either. They want us to leave. Now. 30 seconds remaining, Commander, Ventar reported. The unknown ships are powering up their weapons systems. Zaxxon made his decision. Helm, set course for the edge of the system. Minimum safe speed. Commander, his navigator asked. Are we retreating from 8 primitive ships? Navigator, Zaxxon said quietly. Look at your long-range sensors. Look at all those debris fields. Those are the remains of fleets that probably asked the same question you just asked. As the Wisdom Eternal began to withdraw, Zaxxon opened a secure channel to Dominion intelligence. Admiral Cathara needed to know what he had discovered. Admiral, this is Commander Zaxxon reporting from the unknown system. Report, Commander. Admiral, we have made contact with the unknown species. They call this system their territory, and they have been systematically destroying any military vessels that enter it. The debris fields here represent fleets from at least 4 different species, all destroyed over the past year. What is their technological level? That is the problem, Admiral. Their ships appear primitive, but they demonstrate tactical knowledge that suggests they understand modern space warfare. They know about the Dominion, our policies, and our military capabilities. And, Admiral, they are not afraid of us. The silence from the other end of the channel lasted for several long moments. Commander, are you telling me that a primitive species has been monitoring the Dominion and destroying any fleet that approaches their territory? Yes, Admiral. And based on their communications, they have no intention of joining the Dominion or acknowledging our authority. They consider themselves to be an independent civilization. Impossible. Admiral, with respect, the evidence suggests otherwise. These beings have been preparing for contact with galactic civilization for some time. They are organized, well-informed, and apparently quite capable of defending themselves. Another long silence. Commander, return to base immediately. I want a full report on everything you observed, and Commander, classify this encounter at the highest security level. Understood, Admiral. As the Wisdom Eternal reached the edge of the system, Zaxxon took one last look at the blue and white planet. Somewhere down there was a species that had looked up at the stars and decided that when contact came, they would meet it on their own terms. The galaxy had just become a much more complicated place. War Captain Thakur of the Kronar Dreadnought Bone Crusher was in a very bad mood. His hunting pack had been tracking Vorthak raiders for 3 months, looking forward to the battle that would prove Kronar superiority once again. Instead, he had found debris fields and mystery. The Kronar lived for war. Their entire society was built around the concept of honorable combat. Finding out that someone else had claimed his prey was insulting. Finding out that the someone was completely unknown was intolerable. War Captain, reported his weapons officer, we have arrived at the target system. Sensors confirm the presence of the Dominion science vessel Wisdom Eternal and the unknown species. Multiple contacts, War Captain. At least 60 small vessels in various orbital positions around the third planet. They appear to be maintaining a defensive formation. Thakur studied the tactical display. 60 small ships against his dreadnought. The Bone Crusher was 3 kilometers of living metal, grown from Kronar war coral, and armed with weapons that could crack moons. These primitive vessels would be destroyed in minutes. But somewhere in this system were the remains of his hunting pack brothers who had been killed by these same primitives. War Captain, his sensor officer called, we are receiving a transmission from one of the unknown vessels. Put it through. The voice that came through the speakers was calm and controlled, speaking in fluent Kronar trade language. Kronar vessel, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force ship Defiant. You are entering human space without authorization. State your business here. Human space. Thakur's forearms clenched with rage. These humans claimed ownership of an entire star system, as if they were equals to the great powers of the galaxy. I am War Captain Thakur of the Kronar Imperium, he replied. I have come to avenge my hunting pack brothers who were murdered in this system. Surrender those responsible for their deaths. War Captain, your brothers attacked our patrol ships without provocation. They were destroyed in legitimate self-defense. We suggest you withdraw before you join them. The insolence was beyond belief. A primitive species was threatening a Kronar dreadnought. Thakur's crew began the ritual war chanting that preceded battle. The sound echoed through the ship's living corridors like thunder. War Captain, his communications officer reported, the Dominion vessel is transmitting on an emergency frequency. They are requesting that we avoid hostile action until they can establish formal diplomatic contact. Diplomacy is for the weak, Thakur growled. These humans killed Kronar warriors. Honor demands blood for blood. On the main screen, the small, human ships began moving into new positions. To Thakur's trained eye, their formation looked almost random. They were spreading out across too wide an area to provide mutual support, and several ships were moving toward the asteroid belt instead of taking defensive positions. War Captain, his tactical officer reported, the human ships are not maintaining proper battle formation. They appear to be retreating or attempting to scatter. Fear, Thakur said with satisfaction. They know they cannot stand against Kronar might. Target the largest human vessel and prepare to fire. War Captain, they are transmitting again. The human captain's voice filled the bridge once more. War Captain Thakur, this is your final warning. Withdraw from this system immediately. We do not wish to add Kronar debris to the collection we already have, but we will defend ourselves if necessary. The arrogance was stunning. Thakur had fought across half the galaxy. The Bone Crusher had destroyed fleets 10 times larger than these pathetic human ships. No primitive species had ever spoken to him with such disrespect. All weapons. Target the human command ship. Fire when ready. The Bone Crusher's main weapons charged with a sound like distant thunder. Bioplasma cannons that drew power from the ship's living heart, prepared to unleash destruction that had shattered worlds. Firing in 10 seconds, War Captain. War Captain, his sensor officer called urgently. The human ships are launching projectiles, multiple launches from at least 20 vessels. On the tactical display, dozens of small objects were accelerating toward the bone crusher. They appeared to be simple kinetic projectiles, metal rods accelerated by electromagnetic launchers, primitive weapons that would barely scratch his dreadnought's living armor. Ignore them, Thakur ordered. Fire main weapons. The bone crusher's plasma cannons fired, sending streams of star-hot energy toward the human command ship. But the small vessel was no longer where it had been. In the seconds between targeting and firing, it had changed course and accelerated, behind a large asteroid. Target missed, War Captain. The human ship used the asteroid as cover. Impossible. No chemical rocket can accelerate that quickly. War Captain. The human projectiles will impact in 15 seconds. Thakur studied the incoming projectiles with amusement. Simple metal rods, no explosive warheads, no energy fields. Even if they somehow penetrated his shields, they would cause minimal damage to his mighty ship. Let them come. Kronar armor fears no primitive weapons. The first projectile hit the bone crusher's shields at 90% the speed of light. The shield generators, designed to deflect energy weapons and explosive missiles, were not prepared for the incredible kinetic energy of a metal rod traveling at relativistic speeds. The shields flickered and failed as the projectile punched through them like they were not there. The rod hit the ship's armored hull with the force of a nuclear weapon. Hull breach in Section 7, his damage control officer called. Atmosphere, loss, structural damage, weapons grid offline in that sector. More projectiles arrived in rapid sequence, each one targeted at a specific system. The humans had somehow calculated the exact locations of his ship's vital components and were hitting them with impossible accuracy. War Captain, his tactical officer said, his voice filled with disbelief. They are using our own sensor emissions against us. Each time we scan their ships, they are using the reflection patterns to map our internal structure. The implications hit Thakur like a physical blow. The humans were not just firing randomly. They were using his ship's own active sensors to identify weak points in critical systems. Every scan he performed gave them more targeting information. Cease all active scanning, he ordered. Switch to passive sensors only. But it was too late. The humans had already gathered enough information. More projectiles arrived, each one striking exactly where it would cause maximum damage. Engine compartments, weapon systems, life support centers, everything was being systematically destroyed. War Captain, his weapons officer called. I have a firing solution on the human command ship. Fire! The plasma cannon fired again. But once more the human ship was not where his targeting system expected it to be. The small vessel had used the gravity well of a nearby moon to slingshot itself into a completely different orbit. How are they maneuvering like that? Thakur demanded. Chemical rockets cannot generate that kind of acceleration. War Captain, his sensor officer said, studying his displays, they are not using raw acceleration, they are using gravitational assists, atmospheric braking and controlled explosions to change direction. They are flying through our weapons fire like it was an obstacle course. Another wave of projectiles arrived. This time they targeted the bone crusher's weapon systems directly. The bioplasma cannons, grown from living coral and nurtured for centuries, died as tungsten rods punched through their organic matrices. All main weapons offline, War Captain. Secondary weapons, also offline, War Captain. They hit the power coupling nexus. Thakur stared at his tactical display in growing horror. In less than 10 minutes, these primitive humans had systematically destroyed his dreadnought's offensive capabilities. Not through superior firepower or advanced energy weapons, but through precision targeting and impossible accuracy. War Captain, his communications officer reported. The human captain is transmitting again. What does she say? She is offering to allow us to evacuate to escape pods before she destroys our ship completely. The insult was beyond endurance. A Kronar war captain did not abandon his ship to primitives, but as Thakur looked around his bridge, he saw the faces of his crew. They were warriors, but they were not fools. The bone crusher was dying, and everyone knew it. War Captain, his damage control officer called. Massive structural failure in the port sections. The living Armor is trying to heal itself, but the damage is too extensive. We have maybe 15 minutes before complete hull collapse. How? Thakur asked, more to himself than to his crew. How are they doing this? His tactical officer had been studying the sensor logs. War Captain, I believe I understand their strategy. They are not fighting us ship to ship. They are fighting us as a single organism using multiple bodies. Explain. Each human ship is sharing targeting data with all the others. When one ship identifies a weakness, they all know about it instantly. When one ship distracts us, the others use that distraction to attack from different angles. They are coordinating their movements like they are all parts of the same mind. Impossible coordination like that requires quantum communication arrays, Thakur said. Primitive species do not have that technology. With respect, War Captain, these humans appear to be a very unusual primitive species. More projectiles arrived, these ones targeting the ship's life support systems. The Bone Crusher was not just losing its ability to fight, it was losing its ability to keep its crew alive. War Captain, his communications officer said quietly. The human captain is transmitting again. She says this is our final opportunity to evacuate. She is detecting massive structural failures throughout our ship. Thakur looked at his proud dreadnought dying around him. 3 kilometers of living metal, the product of centuries of Kronar biotechnology, being systematically destroyed by crude kinetic weapons fired by ships that looked like they were built in primitive workshops. But they were not primitive. He realized. They were different. They fought with weapons and tactics that no one in the galaxy had ever seen before. They used basic physics and advanced mathematics to turn simple materials into devastating weapons. War Captain, his sensor officer called. I am detecting massive power buildup from multiple human ships. They appear to be preparing for a final salvo. Thakur made the hardest decision of his warrior's life. All crew to escape pods. Abandon ship. The evacuation was swift and efficient. Kronar warriors might be proud, but they were not stupid. Within minutes, dozens of escape pods were launching from the dying dreadnought. As his own pod cleared the ship, Thakur watched the human ships fire their final salvo. 20 tungsten rods struck the Bone Crusher simultaneously, hitting the ship's central power core. The explosion that followed lit up the entire star system. From his escape pod, Thakur could see the human ships regrouping in a perfect formation. They had lost no vessels in the battle, not one. A primitive species had destroyed a Kronar dreadnought without suffering a single casualty. His communication system crackled to life. The human captain's voice was respectful, but firm. War Captain Thakur, your escape pods will be allowed to leave this system safely. We will transmit the location of the nearest Kronar outpost. We suggest you report to your superiors that humans consider this system to be our sovereign territory. Any future military incursions will be met with appropriate force. Thakur found his voice. Human Captain, I must know. How did you defeat a Kronar dreadnought with such primitive ships? The response came immediately. War Captain, our ships may look primitive to you, but they were designed specifically to fight enemies with superior technology. We studied your tactics, your weapons, and your ship designs for years before this battle. We knew exactly how you would attack, and we prepared accordingly. You studied us? How? War Captain, humans have been monitoring galactic communications for decades. We know about the Kronar Imperium, the Dominion, the Vorthak Raiders, and dozens of other species. We have been preparing for the day when the galaxy would notice us. The implications were staggering. These humans had been watching galactic civilization for years, learning about every species, every weapon system, every tactical doctrine. They had turned their primitive status into an advantage by becoming the one species that understood everyone else while remaining unknown themselves. Human Captain, Thakur said with something approaching respect. What are your people called? We call ourselves Human, War Captain, and we call this planet Earth. Remember both names. You will be hearing them again. As the escape pods began their journey toward Kronar space, Thakur found himself with a new understanding of the galaxy. Somewhere out there was a species that had turned weakness into strength, primitive technology into devastating weapons, and isolation into perfect Preparation. The Kronar Imperium needed to know about this. The entire galaxy needed to know. The humans were no longer hidden. They had announced themselves in the most dramatic way possible, by proving that they could not be conquered by anyone who tried. Thakur began composing his report to the Kronar High Command. It would be a difficult message to send. No Kronar, war captain, had ever lost his ship to primitives before. But these humans, he was beginning to understand, were not primitive at all. They were something entirely new. Something the galaxy had never seen before. Something dangerous. Admiral Cathara arrived in the human system with a full investigation fleet. 12 ships, including 2 heavy cruisers and a mobile research station. She had come seeking answers, and this time she was prepared for anything these mysterious humans might throw at her. What she found was far worse than she had imagined. "Admiral," reported Captain Villix from the research vessel Deep Knowledge, "we have completed our analysis of all debris fields in the system. The situation is more serious than our initial reports indicated." Cathara studied the holographic display showing the star system. Red markers indicated debris fields scattered throughout the outer system. There were dozens of them. "How many destroyed fleets are we looking at, Captain?" "At least 12 separate incidents, Admiral. We can identify wreckage from Vorthak raiders, Kronar hunting packs, Zephyrian scout fleets, Mandari pirates, Tholian exploration vessels, and several others. Some of the debris is over 2 years old." 2 years. These humans had been systematically destroying every military force that entered their system for at least 2 years. The Dominion had been completely unaware of the slaughter happening on their borders. "What about survivors?" "We have recovered 37 escape pods from various species, Admiral. Most of the occupants are still alive. The humans, apparently, allow survivors to leave the system unharmed. At least the humans showed mercy to defeated enemies, that was something. But it also meant there were dozens of witnesses to human military capabilities scattered across the galaxy. How had none of them reported this?" "Admiral," called Intelligence Officer Mektar, "I have been analyzing the survivor testimonies. There is a disturbing pattern to these attacks." "Show me." The holographic display updated to show tactical recreations of several battles. As Cathara watched, she began to see what Mektar meant by a pattern. "Admiral, observe the Vorthak attack from 18 months ago. The humans used hit-and-run tactics, striking from multiple directions and disappearing before the Vorthak could respond. They turned the raiders' own preferred strategy against them. The display showed small human ships darting in and out of asteroid fields, firing kinetic projectiles with impossible accuracy before vanishing into the darkness. The Vorthak, masters of surprise attacks, had been beaten at their own game. Now observe the Kronar battle from last month," Mektar continued. "The humans allowed the dreadnought to close to optimal firing range, then used precision strikes to systematically disable specific systems. They fought the Kronar exactly the way the Kronar prefer to fight, direct confrontation with superior tactics. The recreation showed the Bone Crusher being methodically destroyed by what appeared to be primitive weapons, but the targeting was so precise, the coordination so perfect, that it looked more like a surgical operation than a battle. The Zephyrian encounter is perhaps the most disturbing," Mektar said. "The humans somehow managed to turn the Zephyrians' technological superiority against them. They used electromagnetic pulse weapons to disable the Zephyrian shield generators, then destroyed the helpless ships with kinetic projectiles." Cathara felt a chill run through her body. "Are you telling me that these humans study their enemies and then use customized tactics against each species?" "That appears to be exactly what they are doing, Admiral. Each battle shows clear evidence that the humans understood their enemies' strengths and weaknesses before the fighting began. They are not just defending their system, they are conducting tactical experiments." "Experiments?" "Yes, Admiral. Each battle teaches them more about galactic military capabilities. They are using every encounter to learn about our weapons, our strategies, and our weaknesses." The implications were terrifying. These humans were not just defending themselves. They were preparing for something bigger. They were studying the galaxy's military forces by destroying them one fleet at a time. "Admiral," reported Communications Officer Yel Anna, "we are receiving a transmission from the planet's surface. They are requesting permission to communicate. Put it through. The voice that came through the speakers was calm and professional, speaking perfect Dominion standard. Admiral Cathara, this is Dr. Elena Vasquez of the Earth Diplomatic Corps. On behalf of humanity, I welcome you to the Sol System. The Sol System. So they had a name for their star. And they had been expecting her. Dr. Vasquez, I am here to investigate the destruction of multiple fleets in this system. Are you prepared to discuss these incidents? Of course, Admiral. I believe there have been some misunderstandings about our defensive actions. Would you be willing to meet face-to-face? We have prepared a diplomatic facility on our orbital station. Cathara considered the offer. Meeting with aliens on their own territory was always risky, but she needed answers, and the humans had shown they allowed survivors to leave safely. I will send a shuttle with a small diplomatic team. Thank you, Admiral. We look forward to finally meeting representatives of the Galactic Dominion in person. 2 hours later, Admiral Cathara found herself aboard a human space station that was far more advanced than she had expected. The technology was still clearly primitive by Dominion standards, but it showed a level of engineering sophistication that did not match the crude ships they had observed. Dr. Elena Vasquez was waiting in what appeared to be a carefully designed meeting room. She was a human female, shorter than most Dominion species but carrying herself with quiet confidence. Her appearance was unremarkable, except for her eyes, which seemed to miss nothing. Admiral Cathara, she said, using what Cathara assumed was a human greeting gesture. Thank you for accepting our invitation. I hope we can clear up any confusion about recent events. Dr. Vasquez, 12 fleets have been destroyed in this system over the past 2 years. That goes beyond defensive action. I understand your concern, Admiral, but from our perspective, we have been defending our home against repeated unprovoked attacks. Every fleet that entered our system did so without permission and showed hostile intent when asked to leave. Hostile intent? Yes, Admiral. The Vorthak immediately began scanning our defenses and planning attack vectors. The Kronar demanded we surrender our planet to their empire. The Zephyrians tried to establish a forward observation post in our outer system without consultation. We asked all of them to leave peacefully. They refused. Cathara studied the human woman carefully. She seemed sincere, but there were too many questions. Dr. Vasquez, how does a pre-spaceflight civilization develop the capability to destroy advanced military fleets? Who told you we were pre-spaceflight, Admiral? The question caught Cathara off guard. Our sensors detected early industrial-level electromagnetic emissions from your planet. Your energy output suggests a civilization that has not yet developed. Fusion power. Dr. Vasquez smiled, and something in that expression made Cathara nervous. Admiral, what you detected was exactly what we wanted you to detect. We have been monitoring galactic communications for over 40 years. We know how your sensors work, and we know how to hide from them. You have been hiding your true technological level? Admiral, when a primitive species discovers that the galaxy is full of advanced civilizations with a history of conquering less developed worlds, what would you expect them to do? The logic was uncomfortable but undeniable. If a primitive species learned about galactic civilization, their first priority would be avoiding conquest. So you developed stealth technology to hide your advancement. Among other things, yes. But more importantly, we developed intelligence-gathering capabilities. We have been studying every species in the galaxy for decades. We know your military capabilities, your tactical doctrines, and your weaknesses. Our weaknesses? Yes, Admiral. The Vorthak rely too heavily on speed and surprise. Deny them that advantage, and they become vulnerable. The Kronar are brave warriors, but they follow predictable attack patterns. The Zephyrians trust their technology too much and do not adapt when it fails them. Dr. Vasquez activated a holographic display that showed detailed analyses of various galactic military forces. The depth of information was staggering. Ship, designs, weapon specifications, tactical manuals, psychological profiles of military leaders. How did you gather all this intelligence? Admiral, your civilizations broadcast an enormous amount of information into space. Military communications, technical specifications, tactical discussions. We have been listening for 40 years. We probably know more about galactic military capabilities than most galactic governments do. Cathara felt her certainty crumbling. These humans had turned their primitive status into the ultimate intelligence advantage. While everyone else assumed they were insignificant, they had been studying and preparing. Dr. Vasquez, what do your people want? That is a very simple question with a complex answer, Admiral. We want to survive. We want to remain independent, and we want to be left alone to develop on our own terms. The Dominion does not usually allow independence to species within our sphere of influence. We are aware of that, Admiral. We are also aware that the Dominion's preferred methods are diplomatic pressure, followed by economic integration, followed by political absorption. We have studied your expansion patterns very thoroughly. And you object to this process? Admiral, we have observed what happens to species that join the Dominion. They lose their independence, their unique cultures, and their right to self-determination. We have no interest in that future. Cathara studied the human woman carefully. There was no hostility in her words, but there was absolute determination. Dr. Vasquez, the Dominion offers protection, advanced technology, and access to galactic trade networks. These are significant benefits. Admiral, we prefer to develop our own technology and establish our own trade relationships. As for protection, I think recent events have demonstrated that we are quite capable of defending ourselves. That was certainly true. The debris fields throughout the system were proof of that. What happens if the Dominion decides that your independence is not acceptable? Dr. Vasquez's expression did not change, but something in her eyes grew harder. Admiral, we have been preparing for that possibility for 4 decades. Every fleet that has attacked us has taught us something new about galactic warfare. We are very fast learners. The threat was politely stated but completely clear. The humans were not just defending their current territory, they were preparing for larger conflicts. Dr. Vasquez, are you threatening the Galactic Dominion? Not at all, Admiral. We are simply explaining that we intend to remain independent. How the Dominion chooses to respond to that intention is entirely up to you. Cathara realized she was facing a species unlike any in the registry. The humans combined primitive technology with advanced intelligence gathering, defensive capabilities, with strategic thinking, and polite diplomacy with absolute determination. Dr. Vasquez, I must ask you directly, are humans planning to expand beyond this system? Eventually, yes, but not through conquest, Admiral. We plan to explore, to learn, and to establish peaceful relationships with other independent civilizations. We have no interest in empire building. And if you encounter resistance to your expansion, then we will defend ourselves, just as we have been doing here. The conversation continued for several more hours, but Cathara already understood the essential truth. Humanity was not going to submit to Dominion authority. They had spent decades preparing to resist, and they had proven their capability to do so effectively. When she returned to her flagship, Cathara found herself facing the most important decision of her career. She could recommend military action against humanity, knowing it would likely fail and cost thousands of lives. She could recommend acceptance of human independence, knowing it would set a dangerous precedent for other species. Or she could recommend something that had never been tried before in Dominion history. As she began composing her report to the Dominion Council, Admiral Cathara realized that the galaxy was about to change in ways that no one could predict. The humans had introduced a new factor into galactic politics: the possibility that a species could choose its own destiny and make that choice stick through superior intelligence and determination. It was a terrifying and wonderful thought. The Dominion Council chamber had not seen such chaos in over 1,000 years. Representatives from dozens of species argued, threatened, and demanded action as Admiral Cathara's report was discussed for the 4th consecutive day. "This is impossible," declared Councillor Vexoth of the Mandarin Commercial Guild. "A primitive species cannot simply declare independence from galactic civilization. It sets a dangerous precedent." "Dangerous precedent?" countered Councillor Yelena of the Pacifist Union. "They destroyed 12 military fleets. What precedent does that set if we attack them?" High Chancellor Mordak raised his primary hand for silence. The ancient Zelani had ruled the Dominion Council for over 2 centuries, and his word carried absolute authority. Counselors, we must deal with facts, not fears. Admiral Kethara, please summarize your findings for the Council once more. Admiral Kethara stood before the Assembly, her forearms held in the formal position of military reporting. High Chancellor, the species known as humans have been systematically studying galactic civilization for over 4 decades. They possess detailed intelligence on our military capabilities, political structures, and expansion strategies. They have used this knowledge to develop highly effective defensive capabilities that have destroyed fleets from 6 different species, added Counselor Jektar of the Kronar Imperium. His scarred face showed the rage that all Kronar felt when discussing their defeat. This cannot be tolerated. Counselor Jektar, Kethara replied calmly. Your war captain confirmed that the humans offered multiple opportunities for peaceful withdrawal. The Bone Crusher was destroyed only after it opened fire first. War Captain Thakur was defending Kronar. Honor! War Captain Thakur was the aggressor in that encounter. The humans were defending their sovereign territory. Sovereign territory? Counselor Vexoth's voice rose to a near shout. They are a single-planet species. They have no right to claim sovereignty. High Chancellor Mordak gestured for silence again. Admiral, in your professional assessment, what level of threat do these humans represent to Dominion security? Kethara had been dreading this question. Her answer would determine the fate of an entire species. High Chancellor, that depends entirely on how the Dominion chooses to interact with them. Explain. If we attempt military action against humanity, they will resist effectively. They have proven their capability to destroy superior forces through advanced intelligence and superior tactics. A military campaign against them would be costly and might fail entirely. The chamber erupted in angry voices. The idea that the mighty Dominion could fail against a single planet species was almost heretical. However, Kethara continued, raising her voice above the chaos. If we choose to accept their independence and establish normal diplomatic relations, they represent no threat to anyone. Their stated goals are exploration and peaceful contact with other civilizations. You believe we should simply allow them to thumb their nose at Dominion authority? Demanded Counselor Vexoth. Counselor, I believe we should recognize reality. These humans are not going to submit to Dominion rule. They have spent 4 decades preparing to resist us. We can either accept their independence gracefully, or we can fight a war that we might not win. Might not win? Counselor Jektar's voice was filled with disbelief. The Dominion has never lost a war. The Dominion has never faced an enemy like this before, Kethara replied. These humans do not fight like anyone else. They study their enemies, identify weaknesses, and exploit them with precision that borders on the supernatural. Every battle teaches them more about our capabilities, while revealing nothing about theirs. Admiral, High Chancellor Mordak said quietly, what is your recommendation? This was the moment Kethara had been preparing for since her return from human space. She had spent weeks analyzing the situation from every possible angle. There was only one logical conclusion. High Chancellor, I recommend that the Dominion offer humanity full recognition as an independent civilization. I recommend that we establish formal diplomatic relations and propose a mutual non-aggression pact. The silence that followed was complete. In 3,000 years of Dominion expansion, no species had ever been offered independence without first being conquered. You recommend rewarding their defiance, Counselor Vexoth said coldly. I recommend acknowledging their capability, Kethara replied. Counselors, these humans have already proven they can defend themselves against our most advanced military forces. They have done so without suffering a single casualty in any engagement. They are not going to be conquered by traditional methods. What about orbital bombardment? Suggested Counselor Jektar. We could destroy their planet from space. Counselor, they have been monitoring our communications for 40 years. They know about orbital bombardment. They know about planet killers. They know about every weapon system in the Dominion arsenal. If they chose to reveal their location and challenge us openly, it means they believe they can defend against anything we might use. Impossible! Is it, Counselor? They destroyed a Kronar dreadnought using primitive kinetic weapons. They have already demonstrated that they can achieve impossible results through superior intelligence and tactics. High Chancellor Mordak leaned forward in his chair. Admiral, do you believe these humans pose a long-term threat to Dominion interests? Cathara chose her words carefully. High Chancellor, I believe they will become exactly what we force them to become. If we treat them as enemies, they will become enemies. If we treat them as equals, they may become valuable allies. Allies? Counselor Vexoth looked scandalized. A primitive species as allies to the Galactic Dominion? Counselor, a species that can gather detailed intelligence on galactic civilization without being detected, develop effective counter-strategies against superior forces, and coordinate complex military operations with primitive technology is not truly primitive. They are different. Different how? They adapt, Counselor. They learn faster than any species I've ever encountered. They turn disadvantages into advantages and weaknesses into strengths. That kind of capability could be very useful to the Dominion if properly channeled. High Chancellor Mordak was quiet for a long moment, considering. When he finally spoke, his words carried the weight of centuries of leadership. Counselors, we face a unique situation. For the first time in Dominion history, we have encountered a species that can successfully resist our expansion while offering no threat to our existing territory. Admiral Cathara's analysis suggests that military action would be costly and uncertain, while diplomatic recognition would eliminate the problem entirely. High Chancellor, Counselor Jektar protested, if we allow one species to defy Dominion authority, others will follow their example. Counselor, if we attack one species and fail to conquer them, that will also inspire others to resist. The question is whether we prefer to be seen as reasonable rulers who respect capability, or as failed conquerors who cannot subdue a single planet. The logic was undeniable. The Dominion's power rested on the perception that resistance was futile. If they attacked humanity and failed, that perception would be shattered. If they recognized humanity's independence, they could claim to be magnanimous rulers who rewarded exceptional capability. I call for a formal vote, High Chancellor Mordak announced. All in favor of offering diplomatic recognition to the human species. The vote was closer than Admiral Cathara had expected, but the motion passed. The Galactic Dominion would officially recognize humanity as an independent civilization for the first time in its history. 3 days later, Admiral Cathara found herself back in the Sol system, this time carrying a formal diplomatic proposal instead of military threats. Dr. Vasquez, she said as they met again on the human orbital station, the Dominion Council has voted to offer your species full recognition as an independent civilization. We propose to establish formal diplomatic relations and negotiate a mutual non-aggression pact. The human diplomats studied the proposal carefully before responding. Admiral, we appreciate the Dominion's offer. However, humanity has reached a consensus on this matter. We respectfully decline. You decline diplomatic recognition? We decline to enter into any formal agreements with the Dominion. We prefer to maintain our independence completely. Admiral Cathara felt a familiar chill. Dr. Vasquez, you do understand that this offer represents an unprecedented gesture of respect from the Dominion? We understand that, Admiral. We also understand that formal diplomatic relations with the Dominion have a tendency to evolve into political integration over time. We have studied your history very carefully. What do you want from us? Nothing, Admiral. We want to be left alone to develop our own civilization in our own way. We will defend ourselves if attacked, and we will establish peaceful relations with any species that approaches us with respect. But we will not submit to anyone's authority except our own. Admiral Cathara realized she was witnessing something that had never happened before in galactic history. A species was choosing complete independence over the protection and benefits of joining galactic civilization. Dr. Vasquez, what happens now? Now we continue preparing for the future, Admiral. We have learned much about galactic civilization, but we still have much to learn. We will continue to explore, to study, and to defend ourselves as necessary. You plan to expand beyond this system? Eventually, yes, but not through conquest or colonization. We plan to explore the galaxy as independent beings, establishing relationships with other independent species and learning from every encounter. As Admiral Cathara prepared to leave the Sol system for the final time, she updated humanity's entry in the Complete Species Registry. The file now read, Species, Human Homeworld, Earth, Sol System. Technology level, Variable, Estimated Equivalent. To Level 712, Military Capability, Extremely High Threat Assessment, Extreme if provoked, Minimal if left alone. Political status, Independent Special Notes, First species to achieve military victory against Dominion-level forces using inferior technology. Demonstrates unprecedented intelligence gathering and tactical adaptation capabilities. Recommend extreme caution. Do not underestimate. But as she transmitted the updated file, Admiral Cathara knew that the real changes were just beginning. Word of humanity's successful resistance would spread throughout the galaxy. Other species would begin to question whether Dominion membership was truly inevitable. In the outer regions of Dominion space, long-suppressed independence movements would hear about the small blue planet that had faced down the galaxy's greatest empire and chosen to remain free. Some would try to follow humanity's example. Most would fail. They lacked humanity's unique combination of intelligence, preparation, and adaptability. But some might succeed. On Earth, Captain Sarah Chen stood in the command center of the Global Defense Initiative, watching as the last Dominion ships departed the Sol system. Around her, technicians and analysts continued their work monitoring galactic communications and studying potential threats. "Captain," reported her intelligence officer, "we're receiving increased chatter from several systems in the Outer Rim. It appears word of our encounters is spreading." "Any direct threats?" "Not yet, Captain, but several species are expressing interest in establishing contact. Some appear to be independence movements seeking advice or support." Captain Chen studied the galactic map displayed on the main screen. Dozens of species scattered across hundreds of light years, all looking to the small blue planet that had somehow achieved the impossible. "Send a message to all interested parties," she ordered. "Humanity is willing to share information about defensive strategies and resistance tactics with any species seeking to maintain their independence. We do not offer military support, but we do offer knowledge." "Yes, Captain. And Captain, we're also detecting increased activity in several human shipyards. The Independence-class vessels are ahead of construction schedule." Captain Chen smiled. The Independence-class ships were humanity's first true interstellar vessels, designed to explore the galaxy while defending human interests wherever they traveled. They incorporated everything humanity had learned from studying galactic technology, combined with uniquely human innovations. "Excellent. How soon until the first squadron is ready?" 6 months, Captain. The Freedom, Defiance, Liberty, and Determination should be ready for their maiden voyages. Good. It's time humanity stopped hiding and started exploring. The galaxy is about to discover that we're much more than just good at defense. Admiral Cathara was right about one thing. The galaxy was about to change in ways no one could predict. Humanity had introduced a new concept into galactic civilization, the idea that any species, no matter how small or apparently primitive, could choose its own destiny and make that choice stick through intelligence, determination, and superior strategy. It was a concept that would reshape the galaxy for generations to come, and it all started with a species that looked up at the stars and decided that when contact finally came, they would meet it on their own terms. The humans had kept that promise. Now they were ready to keep exploring, learning, and defending their independence against anyone who challenged it. The galaxy would never be the same. We understand that, Admiral. We also understand that formal diplomatic relations with the Dominion have a tendency to evolve into political integration over time. We have studied your history very carefully. What do you want from us? Nothing, Admiral. We want to be left alone to develop our own civilization in our own way. We will defend ourselves if attacked, and we will establish peaceful relations with any species that approaches us with respect. But we will not submit to anyone's authority except our own. Admiral Cathara realized she was witnessing something that had never happened before in galactic history. A species was choosing complete independence over the protection and benefits of joining galactic civilization. Dr. Vasquez, what happens now? Now we continue preparing for the future, Admiral. We have learned much about galactic civilization, but we still have much to learn. We will continue to explore, to study, and to defend ourselves as necessary. You plan to expand beyond this system? Eventually, yes, but not through conquest or colonization. We plan to explore the galaxy as independent beings, establishing relationships with other independent species and learning from every encounter. As Admiral Cathara prepared to leave the Sol system for the final time, she updated humanity's entry in the Complete Species Registry. The file now read, Species, Human Homeworld, Earth, Sol System. Technology level, Variable, Estimated Equivalent. To Level 712, Military Capability, Extremely High Threat Assessment, Extreme if provoked, Minimal if left alone. Political status, Independent Special Notes, First species to achieve military victory against Dominion-level forces using inferior technology. Demonstrates unprecedented intelligence gathering and tactical adaptation capabilities. Recommend extreme caution. Do not underestimate. But as she transmitted the updated file, Admiral Cathara knew that the real changes were just beginning. Word of humanity's successful resistance would spread throughout the galaxy. Other species would begin to question whether Dominion membership was truly inevitable. In the outer regions of Dominion space, long-suppressed independence movements would hear about the small blue planet that had faced down the galaxy's greatest empire and chosen to remain free. Some would try to follow humanity's example. Most would fail. They lacked humanity's unique combination of intelligence, preparation, and adaptability. But some might succeed. On Earth, Captain Sarah Chen stood in the command center of the Global Defense Initiative, watching as the last Dominion ships departed the Sol system. Around her, technicians and analysts continued their work monitoring galactic communications and studying potential threats. "Captain," reported her intelligence officer, "we're receiving increased chatter from several systems in the Outer Rim. It appears word of our encounters is spreading." "Any direct threats?" "Not yet, Captain, but several species are expressing interest in establishing contact. Some appear to be independence movements seeking advice or support." Captain Chen studied the galactic map displayed on the main screen. Dozens of species scattered across hundreds of light years, all looking to the small blue planet that had somehow achieved the impossible. "Send a message to all interested parties," she ordered. "Humanity is willing to share information about defensive strategies and resistance tactics with any species seeking to maintain their independence. We do not offer military support, but we do offer knowledge." "Yes, Captain. And Captain, we're also detecting increased activity in several human shipyards. The Independence-class vessels are ahead of construction schedule." Captain Chen smiled. The Independence-class ships were humanity's first true interstellar vessels, designed to explore the galaxy while defending human interests wherever they traveled. They incorporated everything humanity had learned from studying galactic technology, combined with uniquely human innovations. "Excellent. How soon until the first squadron is ready?" 6 months, Captain. The Freedom, Defiance, Liberty, and Determination should be ready for their maiden voyages. Good. It's time humanity stopped hiding and started exploring. The galaxy is about to discover that we're much more than just good at defense. Admiral Cathara was right about one thing. The galaxy was about to change in ways no one could predict. Humanity had introduced a new concept into galactic civilization, the idea that any species, no matter how small or apparently primitive, could choose its own destiny and make that choice stick through intelligence, determination, and superior strategy. It was a concept that would reshape the galaxy for generations to come, and it all